In this video, we are exploring the historic changes of the USA Federal Reserve interest rates, spanning from its inception in 1913 to the present day in 2024. The Federal Reserve Act of 1913 established the Federal Reserve System to provide a safer, more flexible, and stable monetary and financial system. Initially, there was no formal federal funds rate target, as the system was just being established. In 1919 and 1920, the Federal Reserve raised its discount rate to 6%. After World War I, the United States experienced significant inflation. This was driven by various factors, including increased consumer spending, pent-up demand, and the economic adjustments following the war. Prices for goods and services were rising rapidly, causing concern about economic overheating, where the economy grows too quickly, leading to runaway inflation. To address this issue, the Federal Reserve took decisive action by raising interest rates. By increasing rates, the Fed aimed to make borrowing more expensive, thereby reducing consumer spending and business investment. This cooling effect on the economy helped to stabilize prices and prevent inflation from spiraling out of control. By 1933, the Federal Reserve's discount rate had been lowered to approximately 0.5%. This discount rate is the interest rate charged to banks for borrowing funds from the Federal Reserve. The Great Depression, which began in 1929, was one of the most severe economic crises in modern history. It caused widespread unemployment, business failures, and a dramatic drop in consumer spending and investment. The economy was in dire straits, with deflationary pressures making the situation even worse. From 1940 to 1951, the Federal Reserve kept its discount rate low, around 0.75%. During World War II, the United States faced immense economic demands as it mobilized resources for the war effort. The government needed substantial funding to finance military operations, production of war materials, and support for allies. To facilitate this, the Federal Reserve kept interest rates exceptionally low. Low rates made it cheaper for the government to borrow money, ensuring adequate funding for the war without causing a significant strain on the economy. In 1951, the Federal Reserve increased its discount rate to 1.75%. In the years following World War II, the Federal Reserve's ability to independently manage monetary policy was somewhat constrained by the need to support the U.S. Treasury's financing needs. However, this dynamic changed significantly with the Treasury-Fed Accord of 1951. This landmark agreement reestablished the Federal Reserve's autonomy, allowing it to focus on its primary objectives of managing inflation and ensuring economic stability. Throughout the 1960s, the Federal Reserve maintained the discount rate in the range of 4% to 5%. During the 1960s, the United States experienced robust economic growth, but it also faced significant inflationary pressures. Two major factors contributed to this: the financial demands of the Vietnam War and the domestic spending associated with President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs. These initiatives aimed to eliminate poverty and racial injustice, leading to increased government expenditure. In the 1970s, the Federal Reserve's discount rate varied widely from 5% to 20%, with significant increases towards the end of the decade and into the early 1980s. In the 1970s, the United States faced a unique economic challenge known as stagflation, a combination of high inflation and stagnant economic growth. This phenomenon was exacerbated by several factors, including two oil price shocks in 1973 and 1979, which sharply increased energy costs and disrupted global markets. Additionally, expansive government spending on social programs and the Vietnam War added further inflationary pressures. In 1981 and 1982, the Federal Reserve's discount rate surged to its highest level, peaking at around 20%. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the United States faced rampant inflation, reaching double-digit percentages annually. This inflationary spiral was driven by a combination of factors, including high oil prices, expansive government spending, and wage price spirals. Inflation eroded purchasing power, destabilized financial markets, and undermined economic confidence. Throughout the 1990s, the Federal Reserve maintained the discount rate in the range of 3% to 6%. During the 1990s, the United States experienced a remarkable period of economic growth and expansion. However, this era was not without its challenges. In the early 1990s, the economy entered a recession marked by sluggish growth and rising unemployment. The Federal Reserve responded by lowering interest rates to stimulate economic activity, encourage borrowing, and support business investment. This accommodative monetary policy played a crucial role in facilitating the recovery from the early 1990s recession. In 2001, the Federal Reserve lowered its discount rate to 1.75%. In the early 2000s, the United States faced significant economic challenges following the bursting of the dot-com bubble and the devastating September 11th terrorist attacks. The collapse of many technology companies and the resulting loss of investor confidence contributed to a sharp economic downturn. Additionally, the attacks on September 11th, 2001, disrupted financial markets and consumer behavior, further impacting economic activity. In 2008, the Federal Reserve's discount rate was brought down to near 0%. The 2008 financial crisis triggered a significant policy response that included the implementation of near-zero interest rates and quantitative easing. These measures were aimed at stabilizing turbulent financial markets and jump-starting economic recovery on a broad scale. In December 2015, the Federal Reserve began increasing its discount rate from the near-zero level of 0% to 0.25%. As the economy gradually recovered from the depths of the Great Recession, the Federal Reserve embarked on a strategic path towards normalizing interest rates. This cautious approach was essential to prevent the economy from overheating and to manage potential inflationary pressures that could arise as growth regained momentum. The normalization process involved a series of gradual increases in the federal funds rate, which had been held at historically low levels since the crisis. By incrementally raising rates, the Fed aimed to strike a balance between supporting continued economic expansion and keeping inflation within its target range. This strategy reflected a delicate balancing act, as policymakers sought to sustain the recovery without prematurely stifling growth or destabilizing financial markets. Additionally, alongside rate hikes, the Fed also embarked on the gradual reduction of its balance sheet, unwinding the massive bond purchases made during the crisis through quantitative easing. Together, these measures represented a measured approach to monetary policy normalization aimed at navigating the complexities of post-crisis economic recovery while maintaining stability and sustainable growth in the long term. Rates were cut to 1.5 to 1.75% due to slowing global growth and trade tensions. As the economy approached full employment and continued to show signs of strength following the Great Recession, the Federal Reserve embarked on a deliberate path of gradually increasing interest rates. This proactive measure was aimed at preventing the economy from overheating and managing potential inflationary pressures that could arise from sustained growth. The COVID-19 pandemic unleashed a profound economic downturn globally, prompting an unprecedented response from central banks, including the Federal Reserve. To counteract the severe economic repercussions and financial market volatility triggered by the pandemic, the Fed swiftly implemented aggressive monetary policy measures. Among these actions, one of the primary strategies was the lowering of interest rates to near-zero levels. This dramatic reduction aimed to facilitate low borrowing costs across various sectors of the economy, encouraging businesses and individuals to continue investing and spending amidst widespread uncertainty. And from 2022 to 2024, the Fed is focused on inflation control and economic adjustments. The continued increase in inflation due to persistent supply chain disruptions, surging energy prices, and pent-up consumer demand following the pandemic compelled central banks, including the Federal Reserve, to adopt aggressive rate hikes. These measures were implemented to curb inflationary pressures and ensure price stability amid economic recovery efforts. The Federal Reserve's approach during periods of inflationary pressure involved a careful balancing act, aimed at managing inflation while assessing the broader impacts of previous rate hikes on economic growth and employment. Throughout ongoing uncertainties in the global economy and domestic conditions, the Federal Reserve maintained a delicate balance between controlling inflation and ensuring economic stability. This balancing act is crucial as the Fed navigated a complex landscape shaped by various factors, including supply chain disruptions, fluctuating energy prices, and evolving consumer and business sentiments. Subscribe, and happy Federal Reserve Day. Thanks for watching and goodbye.